Good afternoon. It is Thursday afternoon at 5 p.m., August 24, 2003, and I'm calling this meeting to order. So I'll defer to Dr. Hummer and Dr. Angelo for new business, starting with item A, ninth grade sports update.
We need to approve the agenda.
Oh, motion to approve the agenda.
Chairman, I motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Those all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, now we're ready.
New
Mrs. White.
business.
Thank you. So we do have quite a few items for you all today. The first item is we're going to talk about ninth grade students and athletics and provide a clarification. We're also going to discuss the gifted plan, the Virginia Literacy Act, grading committee, an assessment committee, and then the child find space update. So of all these items, the majority of them are information only. The gifted plan, we are going to make a recommendation that goes to the full board for approval. So I'm going to hand it off now to Dr. Angelo. Thank you, Chairwoman.
Thank you, Dr. Hummer, Madam Chairwoman. As you heard, the first item on our order of business is ninth grade sports. We're clarifying this because there have been some questions and conversations in different parts of the community regarding ninth grade sports and asking if we have re-implemented ninth grade athletics. I do want to clarify that we do not have a ninth grade sports program. It was eliminated during the recession in 2008. But ninth grade students are permitted to participate on JV teams. And I've asked Mr. Jason Barb, who's the coordinator of student activities at Shenandoah High School, to come up and talk a little bit about what they're doing and why there are ninth grade students participating in athletics and what that looks like. And then, of course, we have two of our three high school principals here as well for clarity. So, Mr. Barb, and either if Ms. McCoy and...
We won't talk extensively, so. Got it.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. I was a part of the 2008 talks when the funding of ninth grade sports went away. And at that time, we were told that those would be non-funded sports, but not that ninth graders couldn't participate. Unlike the middle school, where sixth graders cannot participate and it's just seventh and eighth graders, ninth graders can participate at all levels of the high school sports programs. Since 2008, we've been told on multiple occasions by previous administrations that the funding is not there, but do what you can to give opportunities to your kids. And that's what we're doing. I guess I'm elected to speak today because I'm the oldest guy, and I'm also the one that's a school that has the most students, and therefore we have more students coming out for sports than maybe James Wood or Millbrook. But when the opportunity arises and we have large amounts of students, we have been and hope to continue to allow them to play additional quarters in some sports or a separate game against a team that may have the opportunity to do that. We were instructed not to call it freshman sports. That was reiterated in a meeting with Dr. Hummer and Dr. Angelo a couple weeks ago, and we're making sure we don't do that. We're calling them either like JVA and JVB or JV9 and JV10, just to keep our public clear on who's playing tonight. That's really what we're doing. Football at Shenandoah, we have 117 kids out for football. We can put 70 ninth and 10th graders on two buses and send them somewhere and play 30 kids, or we can put them on two buses and send them somewhere and let 70 kids play. There is no additional cost. Truthfully, it actually probably brings in a profit for the school because you got more parents that are going to games, that are going into the concession stands buying tickets, and also their pay to participate fee would be the same either way. So that's not what I consider more. But when you know your children are going to play, the parents are there. Grandma and grandpa are there. We have big crowds, and I know James Wood, for instance, they have huge numbers in volleyball. That's where one of their sports that they have huge numbers in. But that would be the explanation of what's going on, and we certainly hope it continues to be allowed to go on because it's kids that need opportunities. For some of these kids, it's what gets them to school in the morning. and doing what they need to do to, be productive students and then hopefully productive citizens in the future. I'd entertain any questions y'all might have.
So my question is with, you said around 70 students going out for a JVA or JV game. Let's take, for instance, football. We're in the season. Are you still playing 4 quarters? Are you playing 5? Is that fourth quarter, is it ninth grade only?
At times, we've played, depending on how many kids there was, we would play just an extra quarter. Sharando, for instance, this fall has enough that we're able to play another school like Kettle Run, for instance, that still has ninth grade sports and JV. On that night, both teams will be able to play a full 4 quarters.
Okay. I guess my final question would be, in your opinion, would it behoove us maybe to look into maybe trying to fund a ninth grade sports team across the county and the sports that we can?
Yeah.
Like, it sounds like you have a lot of kids out there coming out for football out there at Sharando, packing up 2 buses, and like to the point you made of, parents coming out to see their kids play, if we have that JVA or a freshman team, are we going to put more, parents out there to see those kids play? Because 70 kids, there's not a lot of playing time for 70 kids. So that's kind of my question.
Yes, sir. I think, and Dr. Angelo could correct me if I'm wrong, because I know he and I are the 2 old guys that were in the room back in 2008. But at the time, we hoped it to be a temporary deal where we would someday be able to bring it back. At that same time, middle school sports were drastically cut from full schedules to what I would call almost a half schedule. As time's gone by, I think the high school athletic directors have, for the last several years, always said, we got to build the middle school back first. I think that would be a priority. I'm speaking opinion right now. That would be a priority, would be to build the middle school back to a more whole first. Times have changed in that right now, I don't think any of the 3 high schools currently could field a ninth grade girls basketball team. We sometimes struggle to field a JV girls basketball team. I think all 3 schools would easily be able to field a ninth grade boys basketball team. I don't know what that looks like in Title IX, if we have one and not the other. I think the discussion definitely should be held, whether it's something we jump back into with both feet or try to phase in certain aspects of it. And again, our county is diverse, and the schools have different things that are their strengths, which is great. I mentioned James Wood volleyball before, and I know Mr. Gross could speak to this. I don't think there's any question they would be able to field 3 full volleyball teams. I mean, he could probably make an announcement tomorrow and have 25 more girls out there. At Sharando, we got 117 kids out for football. So it's easy for us to play some extra ninth grade football games. I know Millbrook's is going to do it a few times, and James Wood is still watching their numbers to see if they are going to be able to do that. So I think discussion of it and consideration of it would definitely benefit the county. What that looks like once the people put their heads together and work through it, I don't know for sure what that would look like right now.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Madam Chair, if I may, thank you, Mr. Atkins, for that question, and I want to clarify a couple things. We did meet a couple weeks ago, and the impetus for that meeting was we were fielding some concerns from some constituents in the community because some of our schools had ninth grade sports and others did not. And that's how it was being communicated out in the community, regardless if it was miscommunication, regardless if it was truly happening or not. There was some talk about there was some sports going on, and my biggest concern, as I've been sharing with you all about making sure you're fully informed, was that you all, this board, had voted back in 2008, as Mr. Barb just mentioned, that ninth grade sports would go away. So I want to make sure that there was no impression that there was something going on without you all knowing about it. After meeting with the 3 CSAs and the 3 principals, my understanding, Mr. Barb, and I want to kind of clarify something you just said a little bit ago, is that we are not having ninth grade games per se, 4 quarters. We did discuss, and Mr. Gross and Mrs. McCoy, please clarify this, it was just a 5th quarter. And the concern across all the 3 high schools was, as Mr. Barb mentioned, that we do not have enough players to field a ninth grade team. However, the consensus, which I agree with, is we want these opportunities for our students, and we want these opportunities for them to be able to play and their parents to see them play, and that is fantastic. We want them to feel that because it's a feeling of belonging, and it's a feeling of achieving and all those and achieving those goals. So I think we need to take this back and have further conversation because it is a little different than what we talked about. And if there is any sort of need to consider a ninth grade sports, Mr. Barb is exactly correct. We need to make sure that we're fair across the board. What I am not supportive of just doing ninth grade sports for a boys team and not for other sports. I did have a conversation. I know Ms. Altendorf is not here. I do want to speak for her, though. We had a volleyball game on Monday. We won. Yes, go Frederick County. Great game. And I asked her, I said, do you have enough to field a ninth grade team? And she said, no, we don't. No hard feelings. It was good. But as we just mentioned, Mr. Gross does have enough players to field a ninth grade team. So if this is something that the 3 principals, the 3 CSAs, that's something that they want to do and they want to entertain that, and we are willing to field the concerns across the community that one school has it and the others don't, then we can definitely bring that back to you all. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page with this and we're all clear on this, because Mr. Ekins, that's a great question, but I wasn't anticipating that response, so we definitely need to bring this back and talk about it a little bit more. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Anything else?
Any other board members?
Sure. Wasn't planning to comment, but I will. I think, to speak to Mr. Atkins' comment, I think one of the conversations that needs to be had, a part of that as well, is the growth of the county related to any expansion of a school or additional school, because that would impact the numbers. And so I think the model that is laid before us is a great model that would account for any potential change and gives us some flexibility there. So appreciate the opportunity for students to play at the ninth grade currently, and then maybe down the road in a year or two, as other decisions are made about building and grounds, then maybe that would impact this sporting decision as well. So.
Actually, we had that same discussion, Ms. McCoy and I today. Before you jump back in, what does the next 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 years look like? I think that's a very valid point.
Yes, absolutely. And Madam Chair, if I may, one last thing. As Mr. Barb did mention, there is not an additional cost besides the refs. So the students travel on the bus because they would travel with the team anyways, because if they play in this 5th quarter, they still have the opportunity to play on the other JV game. So we just want to make sure that right now there is no additional cost per se, just for the referees. But there would be an additional cost if we did expand this to other sports and actually call it a ninth grade team.
And the additional cost is funded by the school through gate receipt, not through school board funds.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I've got one quick question, and it's just over a very high level, but how are other school districts, like across Virginia? I mean, is this something that is across the board that we're just not doing? Or because I'm trying to think back when I went to high school, we didn't have we just had JV and varsity. And so how's the consensus, even if we were to field a ninth grade team down the road, are we going to have teams to be able to play? You know what I mean?
It has definitely dwindled the number of schools that are funding and fielding full ninth grade schedules.
Yeah.
It's really, I would say it's more kind of like what we have here in Frederick County. We got this school that could definitely play this, and this school that could probably play this. And to field a full ninth grade team, there would be, in most cases, you would begin to look at, like for example, all 3 of our schools are in the Northwestern District. If we got to basketball season, over half of the Northwestern District schools do not play freshman basketball. So to field a full freshman basketball, boys or girls, you would then begin to look at having to extra nights where you'd bring in somebody other than your scheduled district opponent to play. I hope I'm answering what you're asking.
You are.
It has definitely fluctuated. It's based on numbers, it's based on available funds, and it has definitely fluctuated across the Commonwealth, in my experience in both Spotsylvania and Stafford as well.
I mean, and I'm stepping back from a school board member, but as a parent who has a daughter who plays high school sports and going to other sports, it seems that we have the opportunities for kids. We have a lot of opportunity, across the board from an outsider's view. So, I'd like to see some of the concerns that are being brought forward just because outsider looking in, yes, we want to give as many kids the opportunity to play, but then there's also something to be said to having your school being represented in, it's an honor to play for your school instead of, just putting 200 players on a 20-man team, if that makes sense. So it's, I get both sides of it, but I think, from an outsider looking in, from what I've seen, our kids have a lot of opportunity, as is with the JV and varsity teams.
I would just try to echo what Dr. Hummer said. I don't think we came into this meeting looking for additional funding.
Yeah.
We just want to give the three schools all the opportunity, if the situation is right, to play additional quarters or games or something to allow
Of course.
for those kids. And we don't want you folks put on the spot, like Sharando's playing ninth grade sports and James Wood isn't. The reality of it is we're trying to make it so all schools, whether it's sports or clubs, if we have something that's good for kids and there's zero funding problems from the county, and we have volunteers, the only way we're able to play as many kids as we do is because in addition to the 6 stipends that Frederick County Schools pays for football coaches, we have 3 or 4 community members who volunteer their time, and we have teachers that volunteer their time to do clubs and so forth that aren't necessarily funded by the county also, and maybe don't happen in all 3 schools, but there's an interest at that school. We want to be able to give those kids those opportunities.
Totally agree.
Thank you, Mr. Barb. Thank you for clarifying and communicating. I think that's the most important thing. And then just sharing that we do have opportunities for our students.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Unless you anticipate having additional questions for them, I would invite them to go because they have very busy evenings every single night. And so thank you all for being here. Appreciate it.
And I don't consider you too old by any means. I just want that on the record.
I did want to clarify,
know,
longest tenured might be a better way to put it.
I just want to clarify that.
Okay, next item on our agenda is the approval of the gifted plan, and I would invite Dr. Judy Greathouse to the podium to go through that with you.
Madam Chair, committee members, and Dr. Hummer. Before I start, I want to give you a little background about gifted education in Virginia. First of all, there are no federal guidelines for gifted education. The Virginia requirements are that each school division is responsible for the development of a local plan that outlines goals, philosophy, activities, and expected results that structure what gifted services look like in the division. According to the Virginia Department of Education, the local plan should demonstrate the division's compliance with the regulations governing educational services for gifted students. So in Virginia, there are 4 types of programs that school divisions may offer. General intellectual aptitude, which is one of the programs Frederick County offers. Specific academic aptitude, we do not offer that one. That's specific for a content area, specific to math, specific to humanities. Visual or performing arts, we do offer the visual arts part of that. And career and technical aptitude, we do not offer that. So in Virginia, gifted services are defined by a program, and students are found eligible for services for that program offered by the division. Each of the 132 school divisions in Virginia have their own definition of gifted services, their own process for evaluating students for eligibility, and the services offered to the students that are found eligible. In the Frederick County Public Schools 2023-2029 Local Plan for the Education of the Gifted, that document determines what that structure looks like for Frederick County. Each school board must review and approve a comprehensive plan. That plan must provide specific explanations of the school division's implementation of the regulations governing educational services for gifted students. School divisions working in conjunction with their school boards should determine the appropriate time frame of applicability for the division's gifted plan. Historically, Frederick County the local plan has spanned 6 years. So the plan that expires in 2023 was written for 6 years, 2023 to 2029, which sounds so far away. Each section of the plan addresses specific procedures and information for each area of giftedness, again, identified by the school division. Frederick County identifies general intellectual aptitude and visual arts. Once the completed comprehensive plan has been approved by the local school board, the plan will be accessible to the public through the division's website. So the process. Feedback was collected over the last 3 years from several different groups. The Gifted Advisory Committee members from the past 3 years, parents, the gifted academic teachers, the gifted visual art teachers, general education teachers, administrators, and our plan, the 2019-2023 plan, went through a statewide technical review. And that technical review, our plan was reviewed by another division in the state. And likewise, I reviewed another division's plan. Not just me by myself, there was a team of us. So there are basically 4 changes to the new plan, the 2023-2029 plan. First, the vision and mission has been, has been updated. Our vision and mission has changed for Frederick County Public Schools during that time period, so that has been updated by this stakeholder group. Excuse me. Form numbers on the documents in the old plan, they were identified by a number and a title. We review those every 2 years, and some of them have changed, so I just left form numbers off. It's just the title of the document. It makes it a whole lot easier. Specific course offerings have been updated. We've added AP Art, as a matter of fact, since the last plan, so that has been updated. And probably the biggest change, the gifted academic timeline has been adjusted for the evaluation of referrals received near the end of the school year. At the elementary level, a gifted resource teacher serves 3 schools, K to 5. She teaches and she evaluates those students. When she gets a referral in mid-May, there's no way she can turn it around in 2 weeks. So that change is reflected throughout the document that we will receive referrals the last marking period, and my teachers will work hard to do the students that are transitioning. So 5th graders so that they're ready for middle school, 8th graders so they're ready for high school. Others, they may have to wait until the next year, next school year. Do you have any questions? I can go through, that's that. There are 12 sections. I can go through them or I can entertain questions.
Thank you so much. You mentioned APR. Were there any other class? I was looking for a summary, just class changes. Is that the only class change from the previous plan, or?
That's the only class change that impacts gifted.
Okay, yep.
Dr. Greathouse, is there any plan to implement the, I guess you said technical program? I know we don't have one here in Frederick County, but do we have, or are we planning on getting one if we lock in this plan from now till 2029? Are we kind of boxing ourselves out, or can we implement that at any time?
That's something that the consortium of gifted administrators across the state have talked about. I think currently there are only 3 school divisions in Virginia that have a career technical aptitude for gifted. It's broad, and
Right.
we already offer, how do you expand it? How do you make it more accelerated or enriched? And so I have had that conversation with my colleagues across the state and with Mrs. Echeverria. But right now, no. Maybe in 2029, yeah.
So we couldn't implement that between, if, say, for some reason, we were able to do it in 2025, would we be able to do that, or are we locked in from 2023 to 2029?
No, this can be amended. I would have
Okay.
to come back, present amendments, change them, post them on the website.
Easy enough, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you, Dr. Greathouse.
thank you.
And just a reminder, that is the only action item for you for this meeting. Our next update is on the Virginia Literacy Act, which I know you've heard about before. We're going to just provide you an update on where we are, what our plans are moving forward. And this will be something that is updated, if not monthly, regularly in instruction committee meetings, so that you have an idea of how we're working toward implementation of the Virginia Literacy Act. And so I would invite Mrs. Jerry Swager, who's our Director of Elementary Instructional Services, and Dr. Julie Myers, who is our Director of Middle and High School Instructional Services.
Good evening, Dr. Hummer and Madam Chairperson and members of the board. So we have shared a little bit of information previously with you about the Virginia Literacy Act. And from that information, you may remember that it impacts the instruction that we provide at the elementary level as well as now at the middle school level, because it now has been expanded to grades kindergarten through 8th grade instead of just kindergarten through 3rd grade, which was the original part of the act. It impacts the materials we use, the training we provide. It requires an implementation plan, and it requires student reading plans. And so we're going to talk through some of these things today as far as how that impacts us and what we've been working on with the act. The act itself does not go into effect until the 24-25 school year, and so we've had a couple of years now. We got the information last fall, so we had the 22-23 school year and then now the 23-24 school year to begin preparing. The original act was for kindergarten through 3rd grade, and so that's where most of the focus has been. It wasn't until this past July that it was voted by the General Assembly that they would include grades 4 through 8 now. And so even at the state level, there has not been a lot of work done on catching up to that addition of those grade levels, because the training needs to look different. The materials will be, have to have different things in them. And so all of the work that has been done so far has to kind of be applied to those grade levels and continued at those grade levels. But we're still bound by the 24-25 school year. So we're playing a little bit of catch up now with those grade levels and the work that we're doing. As far as instruction goes, in kindergarten through grade 8, you will hear about structured literacy instruction, and that means that it needs to be explicit, systematic, and sequential. It needs to include all 5 components of reading instruction, and it needs to include foundational skill instruction as well as higher level literacy skills. So that basically means that we are ensuring that the instruction we're providing in our classrooms is science-based, it's based in the research, and a lot of brain research and learning theory has gone into that. And so all of the instruction that teachers are kind of relearning as far as what we're providing to students is focused on making sure that there's not guesswork involved where students are guessing words. The instruction is very direct. It moves from simple to complex. It goes through a defined scope and sequence, and we have specific materials and products that we would need to use in order to do that. We also make sure that it focuses on phonics, phonemic awareness, vocabulary, fluency, and comprehension, and those are the 5 components of reading, and then that's broken down even more explicitly into the foundational skills that are the phonics and phonemic awareness skills, like decoding, word analysis, spelling, those sorts of things, and then into those higher level literacy skills, which are more of the language development, vocabulary, word morphology, all of that sort of stuff, as well as comprehension and written expression. So as part of the Literacy Act, we are required to use materials that have been approved through a process from the Virginia Department of Education. And so they have been examining programs. Different publishers were able to submit their programs to the state, and then they had teams of reviewers that went through and reviewed the programs. And so those teams developed a list of initial core programs that were approved by the state. They are continuing to work because now not only are they looking at just kindergarten through third grade, but they are also looking at grades 4 through 8. And so they've had kind of a second round of approval for those core materials. But we are required to use a core program that is on that approved list from the state. Thankfully, the HMH Into Reading program that we adopted, I think 5 years ago at the elementary level, did make the state list and does meet the requirements for the act. And so in kindergarten through third grade right now, we're good. We have a program in place that is meeting the requirements of the act. We anticipate that grades 4 and 5 will also meet because it's the same program. We don't have any information yet related to grades 6 through 8, and I don't know,
No.
Dr. Myers, if you have.
No, we're working at, at the division level to get ahead of it, but right now we have nothing from the state. And it's supposed to come out this year, so we're waiting. But we're trying to prepare our administrators, reading specialists, reading teachers, as we wait.
The state is saying December, so we'll see if that happens or not. The last list was supposed to be last October, and I think we didn't get it until March, so we'll see. They also are requiring approval then for supplemental and intervention materials. So we will have additional lists that will come out so that other materials that teachers want to use in their classroom will also need to be on those approved lists as those come out from the state. There are training requirements that come with the act, and as you are probably aware, we've already been providing a lot of training for our teachers, especially at the elementary level. We started roughly 3 years ago. You've heard about letters, you've heard about IMSE, OG, all of those initials. There are tons of alphabets that come with this act and with literacy instruction. But we have been providing a lot of training for our teachers over the course of the last 3 years, as well as support for our administrators. In the 23-24 school year, the state is requiring training for reading specialists. We had a group of elementary reading specialists that just went this past Monday and Tuesday to training at the state level. And so they've just come back. We haven't had an opportunity to get with them yet to learn about the things that they've learned through that training. But the focus right now is only on elementary at the state level. And so the elementary reading specialists have had that training. And then there will be additional opportunities throughout the school year for other staff to get some initial training. But then in the 24-25 school year, there will be required teacher training that is above and beyond anything that teachers have already done. So even though we have teachers who have gone through letters, which is like taking a college course, or some of the IMSE, OG, those types of training experiences, when the state comes out with the required teacher training, the teachers will have to go through that even though they've already gone through other extensive training because it's part of the act and it will be part of the requirement. We have no idea what that training will look like yet. We're still waiting to find out from the department what training opportunities will be in place for that. And then I'll let Dr. Myers talk about the experiences that they are in the process of providing middle school.
Right, so what we've done is we've created didn't realize how much taller you were than me. So what we are in the process of doing is we've formed a group of administrators. Every school has to have at least 2 people involved in it. And Mrs. Hall, who is our English supervisor, the 2 of us will be leading that group. It'll be through the Orton Gillingham platform. Also, We have a group of administrators who are actually going through the Orton Gillingham training. They're going to start that on September 12th, and they'll be working through those modules for the next couple of months. We'll have debrief opportunities with them. You know, at the secondary level, it's often the case that our teachers and our administrators didn't receive that type of training or education in their own education as far as becoming a professional in the capacity. They're often, you know, they're English teachers. They don't necessarily have the skill set to teach reading. And so this is something that we're working very hard for all of us to learn more about, because even though a child might be in the 8th grade, they may be reading on a 1st grade level. And so we need to make sure that we're bridging those gaps. We are going to be providing that training, and then also, as I shared just briefly, we are providing training for our reading specialists. They've already gone through a lot of the training, but we're going to be pairing them up as well with our administrators. We have a schedule already mapped out for the year with all the trainings and all of the in-between work that we're going to be doing. And then we have our English teachers who are also going to be taking through the training. So it's basically a threefold attempt: administrators, reading specialists, and English teachers. We're being very systematic on it. The background is all on the science of reading. It's in alignment with what the elementary are doing. And we're doing this to get ahead of the curve because we know what's coming out from the state. We actually have the benefit of the secondary level that the elementary's been working in this area for a while. And so that's a benefit to us. It's also a shift for us because historically we have not been in that realm at the secondary level, and yet we all see evidence that we need to be. So that's the work that we're doing this year, and as things roll out from the state, then we'll be able to dovetail that work.
So what's coming for the school year ahead? We are required to have a literacy implementation plan, and we do have a draft that we've been working on for the past year or so with a team of administrators from, representing our elementary schools, and as well as some administrators from the middle school, high school level. However, the state is supposed to be providing us with some information as far as specific things that have to be included in that plan. So we've not finalized the plan because we're waiting for that information in order to be able to include all of the elements that we need to include. It's not required until 24-25, but we're already working on a lot of things related to literacy, so we have the draft in place. We also will be required to have individualized student reading plans for any student who doesn't meet identified benchmarks in reading. And right now, that's only going to be at the kindergarten through 3rd grade level, starting in 24-25. But we anticipate that it will also move to the 4th through 8th grade level, because they are supposed to be coming out with an assessment that will help establish those benchmarks as well. So we don't have the benchmarks yet. The tests that they have designed for kindergarten through 3rd grade students is in a soft launch this year, and so we're piloting that assessment in kindergarten through 2nd grade, but it's not completely ready yet. And so they'll be using the results this year in order to, finalize the different benchmarks and do some of the behind the scenes work that goes with assessments in order to make sure that they're valid. And so that process is underway in K-3, and then it will come to fruition in grades 4 through 8. Our literacy coaches and reading specialists at the elementary schools are the ones who will be managing that. And that's part of the act. It is required that they are the ones who are managing those reading plans. And so that's part of the training that they were participating in the last couple of days. I don't know if you had anything else to add.
I don't.
Okay. So unless there are any questions for the Literacy Act, that is the update that we're providing at this point to let you know where we are.
That's a lot of information.
It is a lot.
We agree. Yeah, thank you so much. Reading is the foundation, so it's really important that we're doing this, but for everybody to keep in mind that this is kind of like a moving target sort of thing, is that you're being flexible and pivoting with each new information that you receive. So I think that's important.
Each morning when we open up our email, we just see something new that's coming our way. And so we have to pivot and be flexible. So the next thing, if you don't have further questions on the Literacy Act, the next thing that we want.
Dr. Myers, we have,
Oh, I'm so
No,
sorry.
no, you're fine. I appreciate, just a quick question around autonomy for our teachers. So recognize, and have had conversations with those who put in place this lovely piece of legislation, but the autonomy for some of our more seasoned teachers, can you speak to the difference that might look like for them, recognizing that some of the curriculum is mandated by the state and required, but then at the classroom level, what autonomy still exists there outside of the training and then the resources that are used?
So we would still expect that teachers are doing what is needed to meet the needs of their students. And so while you may have a core program that is defining a scope and sequence, that's telling you the order in which skills and strategies should be taught. And it's giving you some suggested routines and ways to address those skills and strategies in your classroom. That doesn't mean that you're picking up every lesson out of that program and that you're teaching it verbatim. It means that you are looking at that scope and sequence, and then you're following the scope and sequence, but you are teaching the way that your students need you to teach. And so that's where the autonomy comes in. But even as part of that, we still need to make sure that the things that we're selecting to do with our students are based in evidence and research and are the best practices that are supposed to be in place, as opposed to just, anything that's happening. So there's still a lot of opportunity for choice and preference and that sort of thing in meeting the needs. It's just that we are now more targeted and directed to a specific resource that we're following that scope and sequence.
Thank you.
Just give a quick introduction. So thank you for that update on the Literacy Act. If there are no other questions, we'll move into the next topic. So this is something that we've been talking about for about 5 years. Through the development of Inspire 2025, we talked about we need to change grading practices. We need to change, or at least really look at how we grade students and what those report card grades mean and what they look like and what they reflect. Our plan was, after the initial implementation of Inspire 2025, which was in the 2019-2020 school year, we were then going to gather a group of teachers together and other stakeholders and really take a look at that for the 2020-2021 school year. And we all know that things changed for us pretty dramatically. We are finally getting back to that now. And so this is a year, and I'll just talk about both of these items, and so I don't have to go back up again, and you don't have to hear me introduce the same people twice. But we're looking at grading and grading practices and report card practices, as well as assessment practices. So they're two separate items, but they're very much connected. So the first thing we'll talk about is the grading piece, answer any questions you might have about that. And then I won't introduce the second piece, just tell you that the next piece of that is the assessment piece, which they will also be talking about. Thanks.
So in regard to the Grading Coalition, just as Dr. Angelo said, we're going to take a deep dive into our grading practices this year by forming a coalition. And our purpose is to look developmentally. What are we doing at the elementary, middle, and high? And are there differences that are needed based on the development of the child? Examining our grading practices as, what does it mean when a student has mastered something? And what does that look like to that child and to that parent to understand that they have mastered or their areas of continued growth? So really taking a deeper dive and giving an authentic look at where the child is in their progression of learning. We'll be tapping into the resources around the state. We'll be investigating what other divisions are doing. As we do our work, we'll come back in the spring and make some recommendations. This is the group who we are working towards including. This will be done in the next couple of weeks. And it will be at all three levels, elementary, middle, and high. We will have grade level teachers, content teachers, elective teachers, health and physical education teachers, CTE teachers. We will have administrators, reading specialists, parents, and students who are old enough to, be part of the process. And that will change. That will be fluid throughout the year. So it will be a diverse group, and we will also look at it regionally across the division, so we have good representation that way. So this is basically this evening just an overview to let you know that we're going to be taking this dive into our current grading practices and give you feedback along the way. So we will give you regular updates in this area. Is there anything you wanted to say? Okay. Do you have any questions about the grading?
Dr. Meyer, just kind of a schedule and timeline of what this looks like. When will we start? When do we expect to implement the new grading system? And I guess, from
Thank you.
beginning to end.
Yeah, so our goal is, we actually have it on our calendar already for things to go out in what we call principal notes in the next week. The idea that our first meeting will be by the third week of September, and that the committee will bring a recommendation back to the board in March. So we will have more than just the two of us speaking at that time, and probably throughout the process. You'll be hearing back from stakeholders across the county.
And we would be able to implement this by next school year?
Depending upon your recommendation.
Understood. Thank you.
Yeah, so it'll be a sharing, and then from that, you will make the decision as to what we do and what we don't do, so.
Understood.
Okay.
Thank you.
And if I could just interject, that would be our goal.
Right.
But I'm also sitting here thinking about, we're implementing Infinite Campus as a new student information system. That's tied to the grading and reporting system. And so while it would be our goal, certainly, if something happened that they came back and said, well, but you can't start it next year, that might, we can't control those things.
Okay, yeah, totally understand.
Right, so as we say, you think about the state with all the things coming out from the other things you've heard, it can be a moving target, but we are very flexible, so we will continue to work through it. Any other questions regarding grading? Okay. So we'll move on to the assessment portion of this. We had a committee 6 years ago that took a look at our local assessments compared to the state assessments and, the standards of learning. And we took a look at what we are doing currently, or what we were doing at the time, and realized that we're always cognizant of, are we over-testing our children? And it is always an area of concern when you're taking out instructional time to test a child. So it's time for us to go back in and re-examine that. And so what we are currently doing, you can see we have the Virginia Student Growth Assessments. They are required by the state. We don't have the option but to give those in reading and math. And then that's followed by the SOL test at the end of the school year. So that's given in the fall and in the winter in grades 3 through 8. So that's a mandate. We also have the readiness testing at the elementary level, the WKRP. VKRP. It's not my world, but I'm trying really hard. And so we have several mandated assessments from the state level. We also, several years ago, the state said that we could do an alternative assessment in the history at grades 3, US 1, and US 2, which are the 6th and 7th grade history courses. And so we do performance-based assessments instead of the traditional SOL test. So that change occurred. We still, though, have all the SOL testing in all the other content areas that are relevant to that grade level. At the local level, we have iReady and iStation that are diagnostic assessments for placement purposes, but really to look at growth over time. Unfortunately, this Virginia Student Growth Assessments were intended to truly give you measures throughout the year to see if a child was on track. Our experience with them so far is that they don't give us the depth of detail that we would like to have. And that's unfortunate because they are mandated and it's out of our control. But we're not impressed right now, honestly, with what we're getting back in the way of data from that information. So what are our next steps? If you want to take a look at this, we are forming a committee, and we're going to, again, have a diverse group represented of teachers, administrators, parents, and students. The focus will be in ensuring all assessments are providing feedback specific to individual student needs. We'll be looking at timelines, and we'll be looking at, are these assessments informing instruction such to move learning forward? And so we will take that look to make sure that if a child is taking a test that we can control, is it the best measure we have out there? Is it making a difference as far as instruction going forward? So we will also be looking at this K-12. And for consistency, we want that vertical alignment. So when a child moves from 5th grade to 6th grade, we have a good, solid understanding of the areas they've mastered and the areas of still needed growth. So that vertical articulation is very important when we're looking at these assessments. And also, as I shared earlier, minimizing the loss of instructional time, because some of these assessments, as you can imagine, can take a lot of days out of instruction. And so we need to be mindful of that. So we are forming the committee, again, a diverse committee that will be taking a look at what assessments are working and what that we can control and which ones do we maybe need to take a different look at. Do you have questions for us in regard to this? Okay, so we're going to be providing you 2 updates on both the grading and the assessment committees. They may eventually blend into one, but right now we're going to treat them separately. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And I do want to provide clarity, and this was sparked by your question a minute ago about the Literacy Act. We're not talking about classroom assessments that a teacher gives. They would still certainly have autonomy as to how they go about that process. We're talking about district-wide assessments that we're providing to students on a regular basis, but not frequently, that allow us to get information back to help us drive the instructional practices that will support our students' learning. Okay. So our last topic is on child find space, and I'm going to invite Dr. Michelle Sandy to come up and explain to you where we are with that process, why we're there, and what our plan is moving forward.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Hummer, I have one item for you this evening, and it's exciting news about our Child Find Space, and it's informational for you. As you may recall, last spring we talked about Child Find and our obligation. It's actually the school division for children who are ages 2 through 21. We're going to focus on just 2 through 5-year-olds, and those are 5-year-olds who are not yet already registered for kindergarten. And so last fall, if you recall, it was a shared position between Winchester City and Frederick County for our Child Find. And when that decision was made for each locality to really have their own processes and their own Child Find obligations for that. And as such, we started creating a plan that included lots of details of things we needed to work through. One of those was looking at who would our team be. And so we were able to identify the team using positions that were already in the budget, repurposing those for this team. We communicated what our process was, all of those things. And one of the things we also had to look at was space. If you recall, in the spring, we talked about Dow J. Howard being a space that we could use. After investigating that a little bit further, that really was an option, but probably not the most appropriate option for us. And so today I'd like to share with you that we've been able to identify a location at Jordan Springs, and it is in one of the modulars. If you recall, there are 6 modulars there. 4 of those are being used for instruction, and we have met with Mr. Hoppel and Mr. Raymond, and they've graciously allowed us to use one for this purpose. We anticipate that this will be a temporary location for us, but we are really gracious for the opportunity to have our Child Find there. Just to also help you understand, Child Find is really an outreach to our children and families. So it's an opportunity for us to meet with families, to help them identify what are the strengths of their students that are our young children, and what are some areas that may need extra support. And so as part of that process, we're moving our assessment also to what is called a transdisciplinary play-based assessment, and we are super excited about that. No longer will we be using a traditional psychological or an educational assessment. It's play-based, and so children and their parents will be able to experience this together in this space. We'll have opportunities for them to play together, to play separately, and our team will assess our students on those domains that are so important for developmental milestones for them. So very excited to have this space to do all of the assessment, to meet with our families, and really identify those who have a disability and need support from us. As I mentioned in Jordan Springs, very excited. We met with Mr. Hoppel and Mr. Raymond, and occupancy has been permitted for us to go. So we went on Monday. We went into the modular. We've looked at that, and we're starting to move our supplies and areas to that location. The last thing we really need to think about is communication. So we have all of these places in place for us. How are we going to communicate that internally and externally? So we're working to identify and help our principals understand this change, and also how are we going to communicate to our community this great opportunity we have. Luckily for us, since July 1, we've received about 25 referrals, so they know we still exist. We just need to change the location for that. And we'll work through them on the process, how they will enter the school for those assessments, those meetings, and all of that. So very, very happy that we have this location, and we're moving with our plan, and the last part really is communicating to everyone what that looks like. And I'll entertain any questions you might have.
Madam Chair, if I could just add one more thing, please,
Sure.
because the biggest piece with this is we need to find a permanent space for our Child Find and for our families and for our students. So we will be working very hard to find a permanent space. This is temporary, as we know with the growth in Jordan Springs, that this is not going to be here forever for them, unfortunately. So we're going to be working on this. We're currently working with our team to see if there's some other options out there, and we will have a recommendation for you before the end of next year, because we have to find a space for this, for our students and families.
And please know, we went through several different locations before we landed on this one, and truly is to be temporary.
Just a quick clarity, the repurposed positions were among those repurposed positions that were shared through a finance committee, July, maybe June, July, somewhere around there. So they were part of that finance committee discussion.
Dr. Sandy, I've got one question. Just, to kind of piggyback off what Dr. Hummer said, is there a cap for how many students we can, and families that we could possibly affect with this? I'm just wondering, because of space, if you've got 25 applicants that just came in, and let's say there's another 50 throughout the year, are we going to be able to support those
Yes.
families?
Well, first of all, we can't turn anyone away. We don't want to turn anyone away, and
Right.
there is no cap. But once a child is eligible, we have services for them on the full continuum. So we have to look at that as an IEP team and how we might serve them.
Okay, thank you.
I don't have a question, but more of a statement. That's really exciting about the play space assessments. Having a daughter that's gone through some assessments, getting them in a space that they feel comfortable and doing the things that they feel comfortable, but still being able to evaluate them is huge, instead of just giving them a test. And so that's really, really exciting.
And if I could just add, there are only 2 divisions in the state of Virginia that are using this transdisciplinary play-based assessment. We were a little late to start that process, but we've caught up to Lynchburg and we are moving forward. It's Lynchburg and Frederick. So very exciting for our division
That's
as well.
very exciting. Thank you for all you're doing, too.
Thank you.
Okay, Madam Chair, committee members, Dr. Hummer, this was a very full agenda today. Appreciate the brevity of our team to get us through in an hour. Nice job. So just to recap regarding ninth grade athletics, we do not have ninth grade athletics. We certainly allow ninth grade students to participate in JV teams, and we're giving them opportunities to play through that experience. You heard about the gifted plan, which is the one and only action item for the committee. And then the updates on the Literacy Act, Grading Committee, Assessment Committee, and the Child Find Space.
Madam Chair, I do make a motion to move the gifted plan from committee to the full board for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Just wanted to say thank you to the entire instructional team. I know that this has been a wild year, and next year we'll also, have a lot of things coming at you. So thank you so much for all the support you provide to our educators and our administrators, and then the division at large.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
All those in favor? Aye.